They're dead, Dave.
What, Captain Hollister?
Everybody's dead, Dave.
What, Todd Hunter? What, Selby? Not Jen.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Everybody's Dead Dave, a Red Dwarf review podcast featuring myself, Adam Martyn, and as always, my co-host
Phil Hawkins. That is me. Hello.
That is he. And
hello.
we are back with another episode. We're on Series 7, Phil. We're on Series
7. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Luckily, we did not have to wait 3 years. I'm still going on about this.
Could you
because
imagine?
Frankly, I'm still bitter about this. Like, what is it? 25 years later.
Very bitter.
The fact that I had to wait 3 years after the end of Series 6's cliffhanger to get to this point and see that what happened next. I'm still bitter about that 25 years later.
Well, thankfully, our listeners don't have to wait that long. As you say, we are here with episode 1 of Series 7, Tikka to Ride. So after a 3-year gap, I must admit, Phil, I was quite curious going into this, but we'll get more into that. But the synopsis for you all is the crew find themselves resurrected due to the time paradox resulting from the battle with their future selves. However, it results in a greatly upgraded and much larger starbug, but the curry supplies have gone missing, and so Lister devises a sneaky plan to get them back.
Not the curry supplies.
Not the curry. Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, we got like Lister doing his little found footage thing, and the look of the series immediately looks different.
Oh, it looks so cinematic compared to everything that's come before it, doesn't it?
Well, the first of my facts today, I told Phil before recording I'd found some facts. Apparently for this series, and I'm assuming going forward as well, most of it was just shot with one camera, as you would have filmed.
Okay.
And also, even though it was still shot on videotape, it was then digitized to make it look more like a film. So, yeah, you're right, though. Like, literally from the get-go, at least my man was like, oh, like, well, this looks very slick in comparison. Not that the other series looked bad, but it looked a lot slicker compared to the last 6 that we've gone through. Yeah, and it's just, it must have been weird. For, like, what did you, because we'll start there, what did you feel at the time? Can you remember this coming out, like, back in 97?
Very vaguely. 97. Yeah. So what time of year did it air? Again,
January.
So, okay, year, so yeah. I would have been 11. And I can vaguely remember it. I remember being excited about it coming back because I'd gotten into the show about 3 years earlier in Series 6 at some point, seen it. And in the intervening 3 years, I had watched some repeats. So I'd caught, not in any particular order, just random episodes here and there. So I kind of knew bits of the story. And yeah, I was quite excited about finding out what was going to happen. And in terms of the actual plot, like I remember being like, oh, in terms of how they resolved the cliffhanger. Yes. Because obviously I hadn't quite gotten used to how Red Dwarf does these things. Yes. Now we know that they will quickly, like, if they leave something on a big cliffhanger, more than likely the next episode is going to have a very quick, oh yeah, this is how we'll explain that away. And to be fair, I think this one does it in the most interesting way, because we've kind of had this 3 times now with this. We've had this with the time when Holly comes up and says, "Oh yeah," when Holly used to do the intros to each episode.
Yes, yeah.
Oh yeah, he didn't really pass that test. Larks, haha. And then we have the massive, fast scrolling thing that explained away a load of plot that had happened the episode before that nobody would have been able to read in the 90s. And now we've got this, and I think this one does it best. I think.
Yeah, at least it explains it a little bit. Like we have Lister going around with his camera, basically giving us relaying the events of the end of Series 6. And in fact, we get a flashback, which was quite interesting to see. Although I've got to say, I know when like shows like this do flashbacks, they put like they'll put a filter on it or make it look different from what, to indicate that it's in the past. But to me, at least on my screen, it seems like they cropped it and then they put the most not disorientate. It was just a very ugly filter. And I don't know why they did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what you thought. My screen just felt like it got smaller during the flashback. I was a bit like, oh.
I think because it was meant to be that was a file he was attaching. It was kind of in universe that we were getting this as well.
I see.
It was a file he was attaching to the recording, so it was kind of playing, I guess, as a low res like black box recording of what had happened.
Yeah. Oh, that makes more sense. I think my
guess.
eyes were just like, whoa, like what happened here? But
Yeah.
as you say, we are carrying on directly from the end of Series 6, which is nice. And yeah, it's the most explanative, if that's a word. They explain it the most out of the ones we've had so far. But even then, I think they're sort of like, I took it like they're poking fun at it as well. You know, towards the end when Lister is explaining like how the time paradoxes work.
Yeah.
Like
And then
they did this and they did that. Da, 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 you know.
And then what is it Crichton says?
Garbled, confusing, and quite frankly duller than an in-flight magazine produced by Air Belgium. Now just state our position and explain we're down on supplies.
Yes, yeah.
Which is probably like what a lot of the audience are thinking. Like okay, you got, and that's what they're poking fun at. I think the fact these techno babble expositions you get in sci-fi can sometimes drag a bit and be a bit boring. Let's get to the fun stuff.
When you chuck a load of words, yeah, exactly. And another fun fact for this series, if you like, just because you mentioned the audience, this apparently was the time where the studio audience was removed, and the laugh track was added during screenings of the finished episodes.
That's
so I thought
interesting because before, when they've had to do that for technical reasons, we've noticed a real dip in the energy levels of the cast.
Yes.
But I didn't notice that here.
Do you think maybe that's because, I guess for them, they've had 3 years away from it? Maybe it's like that renewed energy of coming back to this world, these characters after... Because I guess before they were only having like a few months break between each series.
Yeah, it could be. So... It might also be the difference in filming style, I suppose, when you're doing multi-camera and you're used to having an audience in that setup. It's very different. Like because the sets look so much more detailed as well. They look so much more sort of wider and expansive, and so maybe they felt they could get more into the universe, into like feeling the role type a bit more than the setup that you'd have when you have to have that big open space for the audience.
Yeah, and everything, like you say, has had a bit of like a redesign. I'd say nothing too massive, but as you say, you can tell that Starbug has expanded, and all their like costumes have been altered ever so slightly. It's a nice little refresh, and one of the new things, of course, is the titles, which give us sort of little previews of what's to come.
I was going to ask you about this because how much did you feel this spoil? Because there were potentially some spoilers in this title sequence. Did you feel it spoiling you for the series to come, or did it tease you for the future to come?
It teased me because my perspective is I've never seen these episodes before, so if there was something spoilery in there, I didn't know that. Maybe when we see them as we go through this series, I'll go, oh yeah, why did they put that in the title sequence? But this one, at least, I was like, okay, I'm there. There's some funny shots there. I'm interested, but no, I wouldn't say I felt spoiled by anything. It was just more of like more of a lead in. Although in that title sequence, there's some CGI in there. There's some CGI, and it seems the time has finally come, Phil. The time
has arrived.
This is the moment.
Dodgy 90s CGI.
And do you know what? Just to, I guess, cover the whole thing now. The shots we see, mainly, Starbug going around the planets and stuff. You see it, and obviously we're in 2021 now. I was like, okay, it was 1997, different time. But even, I don't know, it just, thinking of what else was being achieved, I'm not talking like, $100 million movies, like just on TV shows in that time period. I think, I don't know, it still looks, I'd argue it still looks a bit ropey, even for 97, a little bit. What you think,
possibly. I must admit, I didn't pay too much attention to what was in the title sequence in terms of the CGI. So I'll keep an eye on it going forward.
Yeah. It's also that they had 2 or 3 shots in the episode just of, like Starbug whizzing around space and stuff.
True. I mean, nothing stood out to me this episode as horrifically bad.
No, it was just more like okay, that's So again, listeners, yes, I know it was 25 years ago, but yeah, there was just some in me that was like, even for 97, at that level, I maybe thought they could have there could have been something else, but never mind.
Yeah.
But that's the CG
Yeah.
part out the way. Everything is wonderfully practical and real from here on out.
That is. While we're on the talking of the ship and stuff, it is apparently, due to this paradox, bigger than it was before.
Yes.
And they've got whole new areas of the ship, which we get to see. I mean, even very early on when he's recording with the handheld camcorder, huge handheld camcorder for the future, given the fact that, now in the 21st century, we have much better quality cameras on our phones
than we
he
ever
had
did.
there.
Yeah.
But he's going right. There's quite a lot of set. There's corridors. There's lots more sets.
I was going to say that
we usually have.
The B deck set stuff looked incredible. Like those vast, that hallway they walked down with like the mist on the floor and the fan.
Some kind of like turbine thing.
I was like, this stuff looks great. I was like, we've had some money put in here. Like that was, that was a real highlight.
From a set. I mean, obviously we were talking about ropey, dodgy CGI, but from a practical set perspective, the quality has gone up massively with this series, I think.
Absolutely, and it's nice to see that they've been able to do that, because I think in certain series past with some sets, very rarely, but because like you say of budget, they've resorted to blue screen, which had mixed success, I think we said, even for back then. So it's nice to see that now they've finally got the budget for because it's only a short scene, them walking through B deck, but it makes so much difference that you can tell that it's real. They're actually walking down it than them just walking against something that's clearly not there. It was a real highlight, actually. I know it's such a small part of the episode, but it was a great highlight, I thought. But we get to the crux of what's going on. Lister's really upset because all of the Indian food supplies have been lost. That means no curry of any kind, no poppadoms. They also got no lager. So Lister's having a little bit of a panic, and is, despite the horrific events of what happened at the end of Series 6, he's perfectly up for taking the time drive again and to get the curry, to which all the others are pretty opposed at first, which was interesting to see for their characters, like that this moment of how these events had traumatized them so much that they, everyone bar Lister was willing to unite against him in that. Even Kat, who's normally with him, in these sorts of plots or whatever. Yeah, it was not. But maybe that's because they all technically. Well, Lister did as well, but I was about to say maybe it's because they all died, but then Lister was the first to die. But yeah, I really liked that. It was nice bit of character work, I thought.
It's as he says at one point, he's addicted to curries, and he's displaying the stereotypical thing that addicts might do in trying to justify in order to get what they feel they need. Dismissing anything bad that might come out of it.
Yeah.
He knows realistically that time drive equals them becoming horrible people in the future, but maybe it wouldn't. Maybe this time it would be different. That's quite an addict's way of thinking, and he does refer to himself as a curry addict.
Yes, to refer to the current Marvel trend, what if? That is the question. He's asking himself, what if? But one of my potential funniest lines came in this whole opening bit when him and Lister and Crichton go to the main control deck and they talk about the curry, and Rimmer's like, we thought we'd have a moment's flatulence. It's a very childish joke, but it just... Chris Barry's delivery just got me. He does that a lot. A lot of the lines sometimes can come across as if you read them on paper, you could say, "Oh, that's quite childish or a bit juvenile," or what. But it's the way in which he delivers it catches you completely off guard. So I just wanted to mention that it was one of my funniest moments of the episode.
Yeah, what we're mentioning, Rimmer. Actually, I was going to say, I think this episode does a good job of continuing the character development he had right at the end of that last episode, because I mentioned this in our last podcast, that it felt like he had grown as a person at the end there, and he was being courageous and stuff. And I think here it doesn't fall back on the let's make Rimmer a git.
Yes,
I don't know. Yeah. I can't remember if they're going to do that again in another episode, but here they don't seem to fall back on that. He has his slightly snide remarks once. Doesn't fall back on being a complete cowardly git again.
That's it.
And at
he's
some
quite
point,
reserved in that respect, isn't he?
And he's quite sensible in some places as well. He's making the sensible point about the time drive and things like that. And it feels like this is him having grown still, and they're actually honouring that that thing at the end of the last series, which is nice.
Well, fingers crossed that they keep to that. As we've said, sometimes Red Dwarf has a funny habit of doing one thing one week and then completely forgetting about it the next week. So we'll see how long it holds. But in all these shenanigans, Crichton announces he's going to clear some of his memory. He's got, the Bay City Rollers, one of my mum's favourite bands. He doesn't need their greatest hits anymore, amongst other things. And then Lister sees as an opportunity. So whilst Crichton's doing that, he's sort of switched off. He swaps his head, which is a great little sequence in itself. And from that is able to convince Crichton to join his time travel quest. Now,
because we've seen the spare heads before, haven't we? There was an episode where Crichton had them all lined up and was actually talking to them, and they do have subtly different personalities. So that's why Lister goes and swaps the heads, because he thinks he might be able to convince one of the other heads to do what he wants him to do, and he's up for it as long as he needs to, as long as he disables his. Was it guilt subroutines?
The behavioural controls and the behaviour protocols or something?
That's it.
And the guilt. Yeah,
I love the opening up at the back of the head, and it's like
it looks so good.
It's like a little car bonnet. He has a little thing that he has to prop it up with, like a car bonnet.
But that's the thing as well. I think, like we were saying about the sets and the corridors, it seems that the budgets increase, even little things like that. Because I'd argue, like, showing that, and when you looked at it, it was obviously, it's not, you don't see it for long, but it's quite intricately detailed for such a small thing. And I just think if that had happened anywhere in the last 6 series, it wouldn't have been as detailed, or they might not have shown it at all. They might have done it from like looking, from behind where you can't see inside, sort of thing. So I just, again, like the B deck sets, I just thought the design work on Crichton's inner mechanisms, if you like, looked really good and reminds you that he is a robot, essentially, because obviously he's so human at the same time, you sort of forget about it. But no, it was cool. But before Lister can get the time drive, Crichton's weird behavior starts to show, doesn't it?
Yeah, without the morality of his chip, usually he would get a warning, or a subroutine would activate if something he's about to do shouldn't be done for moral or etiquette reasons, but that doesn't happen. And so you get him. Yes. What does he do? He doesn't care about healthy food. He serves really unhealthy food. He uses a groinal attachment to stir people's tea. He starts smoking.
Yeah.
Quite why an android would need to smoke, or would have the mechanism to smoke, I don't know. But hey.
It was his casual responses to it, though. Like, first he says, "Oh, like is one of my chips overheating again?" And then when they keep going, he's like, "Oh, do you want me to go outside?" It's just like, outside to where? Like, it's just great. Yeah, great delivery. I just love that scene.
It's not that he's turned evil or anything. He just doesn't care.
He just doesn't care.
He's just like, I'm just gonna do what I feel like. He's not like, I'm gonna go out of my way to hurt people, but he's like, comes into my head.
Just do whatever. No, you get some great lines from Robert Llewellyn, who always does a fantastic job. But Lister says, "Hey, let's do it," and Crichton is in agreement. So I can't remember, did the others... why? Because obviously they all go on to the Gemini 12 to get it. Do the other two just sort of give in?
I guess so. I guess...
I'm trying to remember.
After Crichton had...
Is he like the voice of reason?
I guess so. I guess they trust him, that if he's saying, actually, I've worked out that it would be perfectly fine and we won't affect anything in history, then they trust him, I guess. I mean, to be fair, so. He is the most competent member of the crew.
Yeah, if you had to pick one on a regular day, you'd probably pick Crichton, wouldn't you, for your own safety? So they do head aboard the Gemini 12 once again. They get the time drive, and Lister instructs them to go to it's a curry house in London somewhere. And he says at the back, nice and quiet. That goes wrong because this Crichton, without this head, should I say, has not programmed the time drive before. And they end up in Dallas on November the 22nd, 1963, which for any of you keen historians out there is, of course, the day that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And I knew, as soon as I saw the motorcade, I don't know what it was, like the front of the car, I was like, oh God, we're doing JFK. I was like, I got a lot of thoughts, because obviously Red Dwarf, we've dabbled with like historical figures before. I mean, a lot of them were in that, what was it called? The I think it was the series 4 finale, Meltdown. You know, the wax figure war sort of thing. There was lots of historical characters in that.
And JFK has been mentioned himself several times.
He has,
throughout
yeah.
the series. Was he in the Meltdown episode? I can't remember. Was there a JFK?
I think it was Abe Lincoln, wasn't it, of the president? Oh no,
possibly.
was it?
They might have mentioned him as being one of the fallen or something. I can't quite remember. But he's definitely been mentioned in other episodes as well. It's JFK and Hitler seem to get mentioned throughout the run of this show.
Two big hitters. But yeah, as soon as I saw the motorcade, I was like, right, how on earth are we going to do this? But sure enough, they get beamed in and they accidentally tip the assassinator, Lee Harvey Oswald, out of the window. So what did you think of these like first few minutes then when they arrive in Dallas, like their sort of discovery about where they are or what's happening?
I love the discovery about where they were. That moment where they're like talking about, oh, this could be this is Dallas, and they realize where they are in time, but then they're discussing what happened then. Yes. And they're talking about the shooter and that he was in the book depository, and then literally as they're standing that between Crichton and the cats having this conversation is a big box that says Dallas Book Depository. And just the double take that Robert Llewellyn does when he sees that, it's hilarious.
Great bit of physical comedy. He almost glues his face to it. He's so close to it anyway, but it's good. And so then we get this whole bit when they realise where they are. Obviously, they've tipped Lee Harvey Oswald out the window, so he's missed. But he's not fallen out straight away. We get this surprising... Now, I'm not going to say it's too long. Adam's recurring joke of this went on too long. But the whole bit of Lee Harvey Oswald sort of walking to one side... and getting the wire and coming, that whole bit. It felt. Part of me thinks that could have been done quicker. I don't know how, but what did you think?
Yeah, there was part of me. I mean, wondering what he was doing. Like, okay, he was going. I mean, he tied the thing around him. It clearly didn't help. So.
Yeah, like why did he do that? Like,
I quite liked where they keep on doing stuff that results in him eventually falling. Like, not only do they knock him out, and they don't realize while this is happening, they knock him out initially. Then when he's clinging on, they close the window on him accidentally, and they don't realize. Yeah. Then they're pulling the wire, which actually, just as he's come in another window, pulls him back out the window again. So all of that was good, but you're probably right. It just took a bit long, and there was stuff in there that, like, I don't know, why is he doing that?
Yeah, like what is this for? You do get that great shot once they realise he's gone. They pick up his sniper rifle, and it subverted my expectations. That shot where Cat's holding it and he's at the window, like what's everyone looking at? And I thought that would be where they say, like, why is everyone looking at us? Everyone looking up at these four strange people holding a gun. But the FBI bust in. Of all people, and what do they say? It's like you're under arrest for
killing Harvey Oswald, who was saving the president from your assassination attempts, because they think they're trying to assassinate the president, and Harvey Oswald, because wasn't Harvey Oswald a soldier or something? Is that right?
Let me find out. I was trying to remember.
Because then that might explain why they think he's there to help.
A former US Marine.
Yeah. So they might think, the former US Marine was trying to stop you, as good Marines should do. Not bad Marines.
No, not like him, no. No, but they said it really fast. I just wanted to make sure I'd heard it right. It was all like very boom, crash, wallop, and okay.
Yeah, it's one of those lines. I don't think you're meant to think about it too much. It's
probably
not. Quickly rattled off.
But they give the time drive a kick to get out of it, and they and as I guess a pastiche on America, what do Americans do when something happens they don't understand? They shoot it. Apparently, they disappear. They shoot thin air, and then what's the thing on the top of the box that disappears? The second thing.
I don't know.
It was a little. Oh God, what was it now? Because the time drive was on the floor, so it wasn't the time. Just there was two, wasn't there? They disappear. They start shooting where they stood, and then something on a box
Yeah.
disappears, and then they start shooting at that.
I saw that disappear, and at
And
the
I
time
can't
I
remember
went,
what it was.
"What was that?" And then I didn't think anything of it
Yeah,
again.
it's very quick. Like when the shot comes on, it literally disappears like that, and I can't remember what it was. Oh well, but yeah, I guess that's just a little jab at the American stereotype of what do they do and they don't understand, they shoot. Obviously, that's a general stereotype. We know not all Americans are like that.
No, but there
they've
might
gone
be
forward-
some, especially more recently, some commentary about the police's
Oh yes,
in America's eagerness to bring out their weapons.
shoot first, ask questions later. Yeah, it's terrible. But they've gone forward 3 years. They're now in 1966, same location. But everything's gone. Everyone's gone. It's like a wasteland. It's like it reminded me a bit of I Am Legendy, that like deserted streets and all that sort of stuff. And from a newspaper, I love as well. When Crichton scans the newspaper and he does that like little head thing, like that made me chuckle a little bit. Such a small thing. But a lot of stuff
it's
happened.
like that,
so
the city's deserted.
Yeah.
It seems very dystopian within 3 years, and
yeah.
why we're left wondering
So it said
why would saving JFK do this? Because JFK generally, I would say, I mean, obviously, it probably slightly depends on
it
your
would
political
seem a pretty
leanings,
good-
but for the most part, generally deemed
Sure.
as a good president who did good things. So, what could have gone wrong in those 3 years?
Yeah, it was an interesting commentary though, wasn't it? Because he was impeached because, well, in this realm for his
impeached
affairs,
with
wasn't
affairs
it?
with
Which
a mob boss.
did come out after he
girlfriend.
died, of course.
So it would be a more serious
Yes,
impeachment than just having an affair, because there would be implications that you had links to the mob or something like that. But then it goes on to say that J. Edgar Hoover,
Links to
who
the
became
mob,
the next
absolutely.
president, actually was controlled by the mob,
Yes.
because they had pictures of him at a transvestite orgy. Okay. Sure.
Yes.
So
Something.
yeah, I did wonder
Sure,
what
yeah,
the kind of
but-
like what they were trying to say with all this is like. Well, hold on. Do the writers think that JFK was bad? But Rimmer does point out that like, he was a good man that had a particular flaw, and that flaw was women.
Yeah, and he's right as well. He says that it came out after he died, because I think a lot of what we know about JFK now regarding women and all that sort of stuff was revealed after he died, I think. So.
Yeah, well, there's the whole Marilyn Monroe stuff.
Yeah,
as
and I guess
well,
it makes you question, doesn't it? If that stuff, obviously not the fictional stuff, but if the real stuff we know, like the Marilyn and all that stuff, if that had came out when he was still president, maybe stuff like, maybe not an impeachment, but questions would have been raised. Sure, I mean, look at what happened to Bill Clinton with his affair. He wasn't impeached, or maybe they tried. I can't remember, but
I think they tried. I think they may have got. I can't remember even know if they got to impeachment trial status. I don't entirely understand how impeachment works. It's something like, have you been impeached if they start the trial, or is it only if you are removed from office that you have been impeached?
Who knows?
The terminology is a bit confusing.
Yeah, but as you say, it poses an interesting question, and I say Rimmer's sort of the voice of that reserved voice of reason, sort of explaining like what this concept is, I guess. But still,
yeah, another Rimmer being sensible and level-headed for a change, which is nice.
But with everyone deserted because they put it down to the fact that a nuclear base was built in Cuba, so the Cuban Missile Crisis never happened.
Because they made a deal. The Soviets made a deal with the mafia, who controlled the president.
Yep. And then everyone fled. So they set up camp, and we get a very interesting joke here, don't we? When they're eating round the fire, they believe it's chicken. Crichton reveals it's a dead human that they'd found earlier, and because he doesn't care, because he's not got his behavior controls or guilt trip. But the reactions from Crichton and Lister are clear for all to see. Rimmer does that little snide laugh as well, doesn't he? Like he's like ha 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 ha, because he's not eating. What did you think about this joke?
I didn't hate it.
No.
I'm not going to say I laughed out loud, because I don't I was going to come to this. Nothing in this episode particularly made me laugh out loud.
Oh, okay.
Not that I think it was a bad episode, but it wasn't a particularly funny episode.
Sure.
It was more of an adventure, exciting sci-fi adventure. But this particular, I don't know why. Do you have a problem with
No,
this?
I think
or
I think the reveal of it, and obviously because we're seeing them like eat it, it made me, I guess, just feel more like grossed out than laugh.
I did like,
which is fine. Like if that was the intention, like I'm not saying it shouldn't have been in there, but yeah, I think just the.
I did like Rimmer's reaction though. That little laugh, that was amusing.
Yeah, and again, that's glimmers of like, well, not his old character, but just him. Like where, he gets off sometimes on seeing the others sort of suffer for their whatever it is. Yeah, but Cat's clearly traumatized by it. He's like, we need to get out of here right now. We need to sort this out. There's the whole thing about the time. So earlier in the last scene, Rimmer's like, oh, the time drive's frozen, and then after sitting by a fire for 10 minutes, they're like, oh, it's working now.
Yeah. Because it was only broken because Crichton had pressed the buttons too hard or something. So maybe it just kind of like freed up itself, like it became unstuck or whatever he'd done to it. It just kind of eased itself out.
It seemed like we need to stick around for a little bit so we can have this scene. How do we get them stick around? Oh,
yeah.
Let's freeze the time drive.
Going back to the chicken, or the not chicken, you mentioning Cat being discussed, it made me remember like vaguely early seasons, maybe season 1 or season 2.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure that he made a comment or something about eating one of them if like, and it was played as like something because he's a cat.
Yeah.
It might, he'd eat the meat if it was there and to survive. So that's an interesting character change. If I'm remembering that correctly, it's, that was 6 months or so ago that we saw that episode.
Yeah.
And I have a terrible memory, so I might be misremembering that. Do let us know in the comments if I am.
Please do. But yeah, it was.
But that just struck me just as you said that as like, oh yeah, didn't he say some? I'm sure he was okay with eating humans before at some point in the past.
Yeah, but not this time. Not back in 60s America, apparently. So time drive's working. They deduce they need to try again. They need to set history on course. They need to stop their. Get my terminology. They need to stop themselves from doing what they did. So they go back. They send Oswald up to the next floor up. But of course, that changes the trajectory, and he again misses. So they're running out of options now because now they've got to do it again. But what is it they say? We've sent him to the top floor. We come in on the 5th floor, and now we're on the 4th floor. So things are getting pretty desperate. But Lister has an idea. They go to 1965. What's it called? Is it Ilford Airway? They go to an airport.
Yeah.
That's it.
They go to the airport that would in their timeline, normal timeline, have been renamed JFK Airport. Yes.
And they arrive at the time where JFK has been impeached, he's been arrested, and he's being carried off to an open prison. The time drive is very accurate because they arrive like by the plane.
This is something I forgot to mention it earlier, but because if you remember in the last episode in Series 6, they mention, in fact, there's a whole joke about it, that the time drive can't take them in anywhere in space, only in time. And there's a whole joke about them like time traveling to the 15th century and them still being in space. But here, it seems to be able to just take them, all over the place, take them back to Earth, takes them different places.
I think it's just one of them, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're like, just forget about it. But hey, maybe when the timeline corrected itself, it changed the time.
Maybe. Who knows?
But yeah, because I was going to say they arrive on the airway and no one sees them. Like they're literally there by the plane. Cat's in his bright yellow coat and everyone's just like, we'll just crack on. And then I was going to say, Lister himself is the only one who goes into the van to chat with JFK. What are the other three doing?
Just hanging outside,
They're just but the van's moving. So are they just still at the at the airport?
Yeah, probably just having a bit of a sunbathe on the tarmac.
I just find it really, because I'm not saying you should have all 4 of them in there. That'd probably be a bit too cluttered. But I was just like, okay, we're moving. Like, what are they doing? But yeah, Lister goes to chat with JFK. to essentially ask him, "Hey JFK, would you mind coming with me back in time to assassinate yourself?"
To become the man behind the grassy knoll.
Now, this is a conspiracy theory?
Yes, there's a well-known conspiracy theory that there was a second shooter from behind the grassy knoll, and it wasn't Oswald.
What are the chances?
Yeah, and actually, it's been referenced before. I've remembered now. Well, I say remembered. I looked it up on IMDb, but the previous reference to JFK that I was remembering was in Time Slides, where Crichton makes a joke about, because that's when they can time travel through the photos. And he makes a joke about that they could go back to Dallas in November 1963 and shout duck while standing behind the grassy knoll. So, in retrospect, that's quite prophetic, that joke.
Yeah, that they're saying it to themselves. Yeah. Because, of course, they do get him to do it. We get quite a nice little bit that Lister tells him about what you were saying as well, like how from dying when he does, he's remembered as like the great liberal president, the one who did all these things, and that's what. And I know I've complained about like messaging before in Red Dwarf, when it's like, again, the one I always give is, the Justice episode, where it's like shoehorned in the last this big speech about justice, and it just comes out of nowhere. But I don't know, I quite like this one.
Well, here it doesn't come out of nowhere. It serves a purpose. Yeah. It's to convince him to do this deed, to kill himself, effectively, to assassinate himself. So it serves a purpose in the plot, whereas that one Injustice was kind of like the episode, the plot had ended, and just randomly out of nowhere, Lister starts this monologue.
And then falls down a hole, as we all remember.
So this one, it felt right within the plot of the episode, and it fit perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And with him convinced, they travel once again back to 1963, behind the grassy knoll. And I've got to say, this whole final bit, I actually found it was played quite dramatically, and like for the, I guess if you want to say like the heaviness of the scene, like the music's quite somber, the way in which it's all framed, the fact that of course it's, obviously JFK assassinating himself. We don't hear, I think Lee Harvey Oswald's first shot, they play it silent, which I thought was an interesting choice. But, yeah, I found it quite nice from a purely dramatic standpoint. Like, and he walks away as well, and he fades, and he's like, I can't remember his exact words, but you know what he says to him before he does it? Like, thank you for giving me another chance to be born or something. I don't know, I really liked it. I really liked the fact they just played it for straight drama. Obviously until the very, very end, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, what did you think about this whole like last minute then, the whole of JFK
I thought it was
assassinating himself, I guess.
Poignant, and I liked the timey-wimey nature of it, because I love a timey-wimey story. Like I was saying earlier, this episode feels less like a comedy sitcom episode and more like a interesting sci-fi plot. If it's less about the funny jokes and more actually just a really good sci-fi episode. And you're in to Red Dwarf just for the comedy. Maybe you're missing the laughs a bit, I guess. Not that it didn't have some funny moments, but I think the focus of this episode were more the interesting sci-fi and the poignant moments like this at the end.
Yeah. No, I just in all we've watched so far, I'd say this is one of the most dramatically successful like sequences, because again, like sometimes I think we've said that where they'll be going for the drama and then they'll put some comedy in, which sometimes works and then but sometimes can ruin what they were going for. But I like the fact they kept this one right until he fades. I thought it was very poignant, very powerful. They do have a fun ending. They remember that with Lister going, "Oh, Smeg, I forgot to ask him, are there any curry houses in Dallas?" And the others don't say anything. And they just gather around him and absolutely beat the crap out of him, which I found that quite a funny ending. The fact they didn't say anything, they all just gathered around him. Like, that was quite good. I thought that the last like few minutes, including the funny ending, I really liked it. I'd say it's actually one of my favourite endings to Red Dwarf.
It was good. It didn't feel rushed. It ended on a joke, but it fit with what had just happened before. The joke didn't just randomly come out of nowhere. It was good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is Series 7, Episode 1, Tikka to ride. It might interest you to know, Phil, that apparently Doug Naylor, so for those who don't know, Rob Grant is the other one, isn't it? I've said his name right there, I think. Rob Grant was the one who left in this interlude, but Doug Naylor stayed on. And he believed that Series 6 suffered from like a Monster of the Week problem.
Oh.
So with this one, obviously there isn't a monster as such. It's more like time travel. So knowing that, do you think, knowing, obviously no spoilers yet, please, but knowing Series 7 as you do, would you say they do steer away from having like monsters or like, you know?
Yeah, I would actually. I think it's probably more character driven than the previous series. The episodes probably, they focus more on the crew and the situations they find themselves in. They're still sci-fi situations though. And in a way that kind of feels a bit more like the early seasons, because it was with like series 3, 4, and even more so 5 and 6 that it became more of an adventure series. And it still is that, definitely. And I think this is a different type of adventure, but more of a character focused one.
Well, sign me up. I really enjoyed it. Like I really dug it. So long may it stay. But let's do our regular segments then. So funniest character, Phil, who won it for you? I know you said this wasn't one where you like laughed
out loud. It's not funniest character,
lot,
it's favorite character.
Sorry, I've typed it twice. Favorite character.
It's funniest moment.
That's
favorite
the one.
character.
That's the one.
I'm actually going to give this one to. It was a toss up because Crichton is really good in this, and seeing him be the other version of Crichton, the other head number 2, Sparehead 2, and with his chip removed or disabled or whatever. There was a lot of funny moments in that, and it did give Robert Llewellyn a chance to do something a bit different, to be that kind of narcissist version of the character, which we had seen once before in the Polymorph episode, when also his guilt got removed. In that episode, he became a bit more in a similar vein then.
Yeah.
So that was good, and I like that. But I am going to give it to Lister.
Okay.
I feel it feels like his episode, and I don't think I've chosen Lister since really early back when the first couple of seasons. It's always been another character. And this one is the first episode where I felt really focused on him. The plot is driven by him and his desire for courage. And all of the things that they do is driven by choices he makes, including the resolution. It's his idea to go back and convince JFK. He's the one that goes in and convinces him and gives him that sort of heartfelt talk about it. And convinces him to do it. And so, I'm going to give it to Lister.
Nice. Good
favorite
choice. I also tossed it up between Lister and Crichton as well. I'm going to give it to Crichton for the reason that, I laughed a lot with him. You know, obviously when he goes sort of off the rails of the head swap, Robert Llewellyn does a great job at, like you said earlier, it's the same character, but it's a slightly different variation of that character. And I always think when you do that, especially in sci-fi, there's always like a fine line with it either being too similar or vastly different, where it feels like a completely different character. And I think Robert Llewellyn did a really good fine line of the two. And just all the physical comedy that we mentioned, it's the one I remember the most. So Lister, again, for all the reasons you said, great like character portrayal, had some really lovely moments. The scene with him and JFK in the prison van was really good. But no, I'm going to give it to Crichton this time around, I think. So what about your funniest moment then? Considering, as you said, it's an episode you didn't find like laugh out loud funny.
Yeah, I did have to really rack my brains to get one here, because it's not the funniest episode in the world, I don't think. But there are quite a few funny moments, and I think it's not the funniest episode, but there are an occasional few funny moments and they mostly come from Crichton and his reactions. So there was like how he was around the table in Starbuck after his chip had just been removed, stirring the tea with his groin. That was quite funny. But I'm going to give it to the double take next to the boxes when they realize where they are in the warehouse. Nice. I think between him and Kat, that just kind of that discussion, and while we can see the boxes that say where they are, and then the double take, the look on his face. I'm going to give it to that. But it's not a massive amount in this that there's been lots of stuff in other episodes which are a lot funnier.
That's fair. That's completely fair. For mine, I've got to give it to. It's a bit of a cheat, but I've called it Guiltless Crichton. So like, yeah, the breakfast scene when we first see he's sort of gone off the rails. The moments, even though I was like, ooh, a bit gross, like his reaction to the whole like eating the human thing, like he's just so nonchalant about it. Yeah, I really enjoyed this little variation of Crichton. So if I have to pick a specific bit, I'll go with the breakfast scene when we first sort of the other characters acknowledge it. Just some great physical comedy, great variation, as we said. Just Robert Llewellyn's just great, isn't he? We've said it before, but he just is. So that's mine. But I do agree with you. It's probably not, the funniest episode in terms of like pure comedy. But yeah. So what about out of 10, Phil? How many scutters are you giving Tikka to Ride?
I've gone back and forth on this because I do really like the episode. And I don't know how much to factor in the fact that I wasn't laughing. I mean, it's a comedy program.
Yes.
So maybe I should be, but I didn't mind it in the episode. So it's I've really gone back and forth. I think I'm going to sell somewhere in the middle of where I was going back and forth between, and go for 7.5.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, it could be high. I mean, it could be as high as 8.5. But it's somewhere around there. It's a really difficult one to place because I don't know how much I want to factor in the fact that I didn't find it particularly funny.
Yeah.
But I did still find it a great episode to watch, and it was still entertaining.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit conflicted. But I don't know, what do you give with giving it?
Well, we're going to have a discrepancy because I gave it a 9 out of 10.
Oh, okay, even higher. Okay.
I really enjoyed this one. I loved the fact we picked up where we left off. Like we said, some of the new sets really expansive. It's always nice when we're as great as Starbug is. It's nice when we're not on Starbug, if that makes sense. I like when we have locations and stuff like that. All the emphasis on like character and the more dramatic stuff, as we mentioned, was great. Really dug it. It's not as comedic, but I kind of like the change of pace at the minute, to be honest. I kind of like we're going for something. Obviously, I don't know if it continues like this throughout all of Series 7 or if they mix it up a bit. But just going off this, honestly, I came away from it and I was like, that was a really solid episode of Red Dwarf. And I've said it before, but it's one of those that if you ask me randomly, like, out of all the... Say we get to that point when I've watched it all, you'd say, right, Adam, what Red Dwarf episodes come to your mind? This would probably be one of them I'd be able to tell you about.
You know what? I'm gonna change.
Oh, right, okay.
Listening to you talk about it there, I am gonna boost it up to the 8.5 because I was hovering between them anyway.
Yeah.
I'm gonna boost it up to 8.5 because it is a really well structured episode as well.
Yeah.
There is some, in terms of the pacing and everything, it works really well. In terms of, I mean, just from the cinematography of it, it looks so good. So much of a step up from the previous season. So it does deserve a bit more for that, I think, having reconsidered it briefly there. So, no, I'm going to raise it to 8.5.
Oh, there you go, 8.5 a night. Strong start to Series 7. And people tell me this is the one where it all goes downhill, really?
Well, I've never agreed with that.
Right.
I've said from this because we've had a few guests on that have gone, oh yeah, Series 7 and 8, and I've always gone, actually, I think Series 7 is actually really good. Series 8 has its iffy moments though, but they people lump them together, I think, because
of the
changing cast that's coming a little bit later.
Oh, okay.
And also, so that crosses over the two, and so they get lumped together as an era, I think.
Right.
And the fact that they aired so close together, and separated from Series 6 by 3 years, and then separated by 10 years after Series 8 until the next episode. So they're kind of considered as an era, but I do think they're very different from each other, Series 7 and Series 8.
Okay.
So Series 7 is definitely the better one of them, in my opinion.
Well, there you go. We'll have to see as we progress on. But that's Tikka to Ride, folks. Hope you enjoyed listening to our opinions on it, and join us next time as we progress through Series 7, which has 8 episodes instead of 6 this time. It's the first of those, which apparently, again, according to Wikipedia, I could be wrong, but apparently it was done to meet US syndication requirements.
Yeah, because Which writer was it that stayed on? I've forgotten again.
It was Doug Naylor.
Doug Naylor. So Doug Naylor was very keen for it to be syndicated in America, and also because I think this was after the failed American pilot. So
Right.
so he wanted it for the original show to be syndicated in America. He also wanted to try and get a movie off the ground. So there were
Yes.
various things with this series, like the increase in budget, like the making it look more cinematic, and the increase in episodes, which were geared towards convincing people that it could make a movie as well
Yeah.
as airing on US television. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a shame that movie never happened.
Well, could happen one day. They're all still around. You never know.
Maybe.
Stranger things have happened over the years, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that's it, folks. But Phil, where can the good people of the interwebs find yourself?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Philip Hawkins with one L. And this podcast goes up there, so you might be listening onto it there anyway. But if you're not, go check it out for other pop culture commentary as well on things like Doctor Who, the MCU, Star Trek, and basically anything that really takes my fancy.
And for myself, you can find me on YouTube at Adam Martyn with a Y. Like Phil, I do videos on Doctor Who and a range of other pop culture related stuff. You can also follow me on Twitter at Adam Martyn AMTV. And also give this podcast Twitter account a follow. All Dead Dave it is. We've had
All
a
Dead
fair
Dave
amount
Pod.
of new... All Dead Dave Pod. Sorry, my memory is very fishy today. I've been playing around with a time drive myself, I think. Or I need to do what Crichton does and sit down and have a memory clear out. But yeah, All Dead Dave Pod. We've had a fair amount of new followers recently, so thank you. Let us know what you think of the episode. Tag us on Twitter. Leave your comments on the video. Yeah, we love your feedback. And until the next episode, hope you all have a good week, and we'll catch you next time.
See you later.
Bye.